welcome back to the community panel series. Shout out to all of our panelists earlier from the Synganic discussion. That's the purpose, guys. We're here turning up the terps. The whole thing about Synganic is about plant health and immunity. We talk about irrigation strategies. We talk about amendments, nutrients. What about lighting? Now we've got the killers on stage here to give us perspective about lighting. So we're going to talk about the selection process, which brand versus that brand. If you guys happen to watch the Light Wars discussion that we had in Sacramento, which was a bit of a challenge for some of us, but let's just say thank God nobody got hurt. The fires in Sacramento were unreal. I couldn't believe that happened. But again, we still had a great discussion. So this is more of a continuation to that, because I know we didn't have Nelson on that panel either, and now we're welcoming Chad. And this is it, guys. So now we've got an opportunity to continue the conversation, and we'll be talking a bit more about commercial, right? We know the globe is watching. We understand that scaling is going to take a lot of research, can take a lot of experience. Some people just want to try it in their environment first before they buy it. So that's one of the factors here that we got going on. The Grow World Connect booth is about trials, right? We want you guys to explore, understand the different solutions. I would love to give a round of applause to all of our panelists up here for coming up here and sharing their perspective. Please, a round of applause. It is not easy to sit amongst your colleagues and provide your perspective of your value proposition. So again, shout out to you guys, really appreciate you. This Connect Community booth with Grow World wouldn't be possible without the support of our sponsors, so that's what we're doing. Connect Community is essentially a grassroots discussion, panel discussion series, and Tim, how long has it been? 3 years now since Big Sexy Days? 3.5 years. Tim and I cultivate up in Sacramento. We have a green zone pocket that is very, very cool. There's so many cultivators up in that space, and we all bumped into each other, whether it was at Indoor Sun Hydro or the Big Sexy Brewing. We just like to nerd out, and I think that's one of the best things is that we started talking about the challenges. You walk around all these amazing, beautiful booths, talking about success. Well, we're here to talk about challenges, because we know how we overcame them. And ultimately, that's one of the best things about what the Connect represents, is trust and kind candor. If your flower smells oxidized, I'm going to tell you, because I'm coming from a place of care. We're going to talk about sustainability, we're going to talk about light recipes, we're going to talk about a lot of cool things, but ultimately we're here to turn up the terps and get better plant medicine. I don't want to send my mom and dad into a dispensary and have them buy something that they don't trust. So there's a whole lot going on with that, but ultimately let's bring out the best genetic expression, and lighting is a big part of that, right? We want to understand the different strategies. Maybe some facilities can handle LEDs, some of them might not. Maybe some facilities think that they can spectrum tune, but maybe they don't have the team to do that. We're gonna dive into it. This is about commercial scaling, guys, and so while we're here, I wanna let you know how the panel works. We're gonna go through about a 20-30 minute discussion amongst the panelists, and then we're jumping right into Q&A. Right, we wanna engage with you guys if you have any questions. You got a panel full of experts up here that have dope experience. So without further ado, I'd like to start off with introductions right here.
I get the big boy mic. Excuse me, I have to take a couple pauses. I'm recovering from a sinus infection hit this weekend, so it was good timing. I'm Tim, co-founder of Faven Lighting. Been cultivating for about 15 years now. In my 5th year of under canopy trials, Faven is about 2 years old at this point. Just really honed my skills running under canopy at scale at Alien Labs that connected back in 2020, and then just decided to kind of keep pulling that thread after I left that company and founded Faven.
Ken Garver with Gavita. I've been in the industry now for, about 13 years, and then an additional 12 years in commercial lighting prior to that. All lighting all the time.
I'm Nick Pastuchin, majority owner and CEO of Science LED, also Dual Draft LLC. Science makes lights that are spectrum controllable and with secondary optics. So we're going to do a lot more of those topics, I'm sure. Thank you all for coming.
My name is Thomas Gibson. I'm the founder of Grandmaster LEDs. I have about 20 years of commercial growing experience. My first outdoor when I was 14, and my first indoor started when I was 16. I have a passion for growing, and I've been doing this my whole life. Thank you.
I'm Chad Salou, cultivator, director of cultivation for Nathan Genetics and Kush Alley. Been growing for about past 25 years. professionally about 8 years, and yeah.
My name is Mike Howard.
One sec. Pass the mic.
My name is Mike Howard. I was the previous director of cultivation at the Grove here in Las Vegas, starting in 2017. One of the first and craziest people to initially start with LED, so I operated over 1,000 LEDs back in the day. I am now the Chief Horticultural Officer of FOS and just kind of help growers who are using our tech. I'm Nelson Lindsley. I've been working with cannabis since I was 19.
Let's trade mics real quick.
Yeah. We're gonna do a mic check. I'm loud. No, not anymore. My name is Nelson Lindsley. I've been working with cannabis since I'm 19. So it's been over 20 years now. I've worked with multiple lighting companies. One of the first guys to start.
Gotta love live stream, baby. Thank you.
I think you guys got it.
And on that note, let's jump right into the topics. So our first slide, I would love to open up the panel to what are we growing for, right? We all want to try to balance quality with yield. So there's a lot of solutions that we've explored, a lot of solutions that have come out recently. And I think I want to jump right into the first one is spectrum tuning, because spectrum tuning is something that everybody continues to talk about. I would love to start with one question. Is it right for everybody? And so if, Thomas, do you want to start us off here?
Absolutely. So absolutely, spectrum tuning is the absolute future. There's no way if you have a spectrum tuning light could you compete against a single channel light for multiple reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is because you can add blue depending on your situation, if you have any type of racking situation, to limit your stretch as much as possible, and then go to like a more warmer spectrum like HBS. And then as you get into the last 3 weeks, adding the blues back in, we've seen is a game changer, and a single spectrum can't compete with it.
Okay, I have a question to that. We know that there's strategy, there's irrigation strategies, there's lighting strategies, there's environmental strategies. What if we don't have the right team in place? How do we keep these things going? Because I think, Ken, on the first panel, you brought up a great point. We got to drive tractors, right? There's a lot of pieces involved with spectrum tuning lights, high-grade equipment. You built Ferraris, right? So we want to make sure, how do we compare this from a non-spectrum tunable light to a spectrum tunable?
Well, I think that the best way to have a spectrum tuning light, or to take advantage of it, is have some sort of test room where you can have anywhere for 2 to 4 lights, and that way you can find a different cultivar and see the different expressions. What changed everything for our company is when we had a cultivar that I've grown over 100 times with over 100 runs, and we got 3 different results with 3 different spectrums. So if you have a test room where you can test the different spectrums, I feel like this is going to be the biggest game changer. You can then get a COA and see how that performs the best for you, and then implement that as your base spectrum, and you can still use the other advantages of the other tuning for limiting stretch. Now, it's kind of rare. Sometimes you can actually make a plant stretch, and there is a place for it. We've kind of had a breakthrough with someone that was doing some R&D for us when it comes to using far red to get autoflowers taller, because it can be very challenging to get an autoflower taller, and it's very uncommon that you want to make a plant stretch, but if you want to, you can easily do it by, if you get the far red levels above 20%, plants can stretch inches every single day, so there's just all different possibilities that you can do with it.
Nick, how about you?
So you brought up a good point about what I call operational complexity, right? There's a lot of variables already to grow. There's a lot of different things you can do with nutrients, environment, etc. So adding whole infinite possibility of spectrums and different spectrums at different times to it can seem overwhelming. But you can start with a relatively simple playbook, and you can also follow nature. So you can do cryptochrome and phytochrome activation, blues in the morning, reds in the evening, simulating sunrise, sunset. The plants are used to that art, they've evolved for that. What he was talking about with the reds and the stretching effect, that's a natural trigger. So you don't need to go straight to the Ferrari. You can have training wheels on it and have some preset recipes that are fairly simple, certain well-documented plant responses. You can trigger the Emerson effect with your red and your far red in combination. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming, but it does give the grower a lot of control and ability, and also, as been mentioned, certain genetics will respond differently to different spectrum. So that's the benefit. There are a lot of operations that are running just fine with a fixed spectrum light. It's not that you have to have this, but it's another set of tools that you can use to improve what you're getting out of the plants and give them more. But it's not for everybody, and so there's a place in the market for all different kind of things, and it gives people more tools and more control.
Yeah, Sergio, it was a great question. I think spectrum tuning is for everyone, right? If you look at it at the end of the day, there's multiple thousands of possibilities with spectrum tuning lights of what you can achieve, right? What we're kind of looking at doing is creating templates to give the grower who's new to spectrum tuning, just a playbook, right? If you need bud ripening, if you need to decrease stretch, if you want to promote stretch, we're going to kind of guide them behind that and develop templates around it. So it gives you the blueprint, and then you also have the control to kind of go crazy if you want, right? So it's the best of both worlds, in my opinion. But if you're trying to dial in your facility that extra 10%, spectrum tuning is absolutely necessary.
I was just going to say, I also think there's all different types of spectrum tuning. When you get into like a 4-channel light or higher, when you have the deep red and far red controlled independently, there's definitely things you can do to hurt yourself, where it could really hurt yourself by using too much far red or using too much deep red from bleaching. So there are other options that are like 2-channel spectrum tuning lights where you don't have to worry about screwing up the far red or deep red because it's on the warm white channel. And you can still have the diversity of doing 12 different spectrums and going from 2000K to 9000K. And it's pretty hard to screw it up. And that's something that we've developed to make it easier. But like he was saying, I think that it is the future. I think that if you want to do a spectrum, I think spectrum tuning is the future because you can do any single channel spectrum. So if there is a light or a spectrum that you like, you can tune it to that and then still have the ability to use the blue later on. And I really think that in the next couple of years, it's going to replace single channel lights. Well, if you're going to spend over $750, you can get a spectrum tuning light starting 2025.
All right, I disagree completely now. After working with spectrum tuning for 5 years and having a pretty broad visibility on where the market's at right now, I think we need to make everything as simple as possible. What we're seeing is price compression. We're seeing cost of goods, cost of labor go up. We need to make it as easy as possible for the growers to cultivate the crop for the lowest possible cost. I think adding additional variables in the grow is great for like a nerd like me and all the other nerds on this panel. But for the atypical commercial consumer, it's too many bells and whistles. It was one of the hardest sell points. And also, when I look at a grow, I look at how to eliminate failure points. So I look at additional controls, additional processing that has to go into the spectrum tuning as like a multi-layered level of failure points. So when we're trying to figure out things that work well, it's great, but I've moved away from that, trying to put that into practice at scale and gone back to fixed spectrums because it's what makes sense business-wise.
Okay, I just would like to say something on that. Well, that's why I just brought up 2-channel lights, because when you have 4-channel lights, when you have deep red and far red, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. But when you have a 2-channel, the ability to be able to add blue and limit your stretch, we have it documented taking 2.5 inches to 1 inch internode spacing by using 9000K, and that is.
I just don't think it matters right now.
No, what I'm saying, but if you're spending $700, you can get a spectrum tuning light. So where's the advantage of getting a single channel? And the other thing I want to bring up, if you have a failure with a spectrum tuning light, you still have light on your canopy. When you have a single channel light, it's out. When you have multiple drivers, you still have power until a replacement comes.
Right, I just don't think that it matters to where the market's at right now. When I talk to cultivators that are just struggling to make a margin right now, they want it as simple as possible. It's why you've seen people move away from soil-based media, go to rock wool, stick with a salt program, 2 or 3 part, and they want a simple light, they want good customer service, they don't want complexity, they want a good support team, they want a high quality fixture with a good warranty and a company that's going to be around to satisfy that warranty, and they want a spectrum that's going to produce a crop that's going to meet the market demands. But right now, we don't have a complex market. We have a bulk commodity market. Like, breaks my heart. I've been fighting it for all get out, and I spent 5 years tuning spectrum to create really specialized flower. People care about THC and yield, and that's where we're at. So these little 5 to 10% increments and the amount of complexity that's adding, it's just not worth it yet.
Okay, to be fair, but you also haven't ever done any spectrum tuning where you're going as low as 2000K, where you're doing like the same temperature as double-ended HBS, and you've never gone as high as 9000K and seen the benefits of it, which is fair, right?
I don't know why that would happen.
Well, because the warmer, like I think that double-ended HBS, the spectrum, the results and the quality that comes from it is undeniable, and lots of cultivars respond a lot better under the warmer light. That's why people really like warmer temperature, or they like checkered rims.
I agree with both of you guys. Honestly, coming from a cultivation standpoint, we had spectrum tuning in 2018 with the Cava lights. They were terrible. I couldn't get the stuff to grow. It screwed us up. But as a cultivator, I do want to grow the best cannabis I can grow. So if I can get more out of it, if I can get more terps out of it, I'm a geek. I'm gonna nerd out on this. And if we're in my position here, you have to have all the tools in your toolbox. I haven't done your spectrum tuning lights. You know, I use Gavita right now, and they produce phenomenal for me. But it is something that I'm going to get into. I wasn't using under canopy forever, and now I'm using it, and the health of my plants are phenomenal. And I was looking at maybe yield increase, right? But I'm able to drive these plants harder, drive them harder now. So, you know, I do agree with you because I think a lot of cultivators and a lot of brands we have to survive. We can't have any failed runs. But at heart, I'm a craft grower, and I think being indoor, the only way we're gonna survive is having the best quality cannabis we can. And if spectrum tuning is the way there, I wanna know.
Spectral tuning in the absence of genetic mapping is a huge challenge. It's almost like the industry has evolved backwards. If you had genetic mapping prior to spectral tuning, then you would have an idea as to what you're going to be providing your plants. There's so many variables in plant strain, type, feeding regimens, everything, that you're opening up a lot of options for growers, and you're going to have more people that will make mistakes before they get it right. The other thing to talk about in spectral tuning is the difference between a multi-channel driver, where it's the absence of color is what is supplying your additional spectrum, versus what would be true spectral tuning, which would be a RGB diode, a diode that could be red, green, or blue by itself, not the absence of channels. They're two vastly different technologies, and I do encourage everyone to educate themselves on what the difference is.
I was just going to touch on
Good. I just want to say Thomas and Nelson are both right. So you're speaking in the future, you're speaking right now, right? And I think for right now, spectral tuning is for the cultivators that are already maxed out on their capacity to cultivate in their facility, and they're at 90 to 95% efficiency, right? That's when spectrum tuning comes into play, right now. In the future, I think it's a no-brainer, but as for right now, surviving in the market, just like Chad said, we just cannot have a failed run. So I think you guys are both right. I think there's still a lot to be learned, but it's very much sink or swim right now, and to be honest, I'm not messing around too much in my cultivations.
No,
And even with years of work on spectrum and different varietals, it's still early. So, you know, there are a bunch of well-documented responses that can be preset things, but there's still a lot more to go. So, like, that's why I was talking about training wheels, right? You don't have to go crazy when you have a spectrum adjustable fixture. You can start with things that are known to work for the genetics you're running, and then just tweak it a little bit. Or just, you know, do some things like the sunrise sunset, or for finishing, you know, just do a certain change in the color at the end. You don't have to go crazy with it and start whipping stuff all over the place. It can be a very gradual enhancement to what you're doing.
I think if you take deep red and far red out of the picture and it's on a warm white channel, there isn't anything you can do to hurt yourself. If you're using the warm white, it's going to be like growing with HBS, and the only way you could hurt yourself is by using too much blue. But if you only have 12 options, I would also like to argue that for anybody in any type of racking situation that needs to limit the stretch as much as possible, it's a game changer. Being able to limit that stretch, and for like the last 10 years of me building HBS rooms before I started getting into LEDs, we would always add lights in the middle hanging. So for the last 3 weeks, we would add metal halides, and those crops would have the best color and do the absolute best for us. And I just think it's a game changer. Like when you have, like we've seen where you've taken the same cultivar under 2 different spectrums in the same room and it looks like it's a different planet. And that is why I think it's the future.
I think, really quick, I think it's easier to manage irrigation strategy and limit plant growth because that is a tool that we already have than to play with spectrum at this point in time. But I do believe that is also a good lever to pull, right?
They're all tools, right? And I would agree with Nelson if we were growing 5 different varieties, right? If you look at tomatoes, cucumbers, they're not growing thousands of varieties like we are with cannabis, right? If you want to optimize every cultivar, or if you're in a racking system and you have a variety that stretches too much, you have to eliminate it from the arsenal, right? What if that variety was 75% of what you're selling, right? You have to find ways to optimize it. So spectrum tuning gives you that optimization. We're all talking about plant morphology, so we know the red and blues have a big effect on that, right? And we know overall intensity affects the yield. So when we're talking about balancing yield and quality, being able to control that spectrum is huge. With a static spectrum, your OG might look like shit, or it might look really good, right? And it's the same thing when we look at HBS and LED. There's a lot of varieties that people say grow better under HBS or grow better under LED. With spectrum tuning, you have the option to optimize it all and then push yield as well. So if you're looking for quality, if you're looking for yield, for me, spectrum tuning is something you should absolutely be looking into.
Well, let's touch on that real quick, because what if somebody just throws in LEDs and they don't actually have enough dehumidification or humidification?
Well, I would say one thing that the market has moved to 1 or 2 varieties, and that's been runts and lemon cherry gelato. That's like 90% of the market. In California, 3% of the flower that's grown in California is sold in California. The other 97% is going everywhere else. That's a fact, right? So the whole world is smoking lemon cherry gelato and runts. And there's a formulation with crop steering and the current LED lighting that is done very well, performance-wise. I'm all in on the fun part of spectrum tuning. I mean, I spent 4 or 5 years working with science, studying that. And what I saw was granular differences that didn't matter to the consumer. So what matters right now is that our cultivators and our customers stay alive as things compress, as cost goes up. I mean, the world is tough right now. Things are expensive. For the nursery that I'm partners with, our revenue went up, but our cost of goods and our cost of labor went up 35%. We're in a pinch. It's do or die. I will always have, I still have my science lights. I still do tuning with them. I still play with them, but that's not what I'm going to put in a commercial facility where I can take 0 risk. So I'm not going to, I'm not going to argue the benefits of playing with spectrum. I agree with, I forget your name, the gentleman as far as genetic mapping. Like, we're basically dancing in the dark trying to figure out what works well. You don't have time for that unless you have a dedicated R&D facility, which most people don't have the money for right now. Unless you're a big, like I know Athena is doing that kind of work, but they've generated enough revenue to be able to play in that area. Most of us are just hanging on. So as far as the R&D aspect of spectrum tuning, I'm all in on it. As far as applying it right now in this current market, that would terrify me.
If you get a static spectrum and your lemon cherry gelato and runs is hitting 18%, you can't push it more. But you could with a spectrum tuning light. You're stuck within that, right? Now you can't grow the 2 varieties that are hot in the market. What do you do?
Well, I just don't see that. Right. I see like a general full spectrum light that people are using, and they're hitting the numbers between 25 and 30%. And really what's driving that is irrigation strategy, where you're stressing the plant strategically.
Okay, so let's say for the same price of a single channel light, you can buy a spectrum tuning light that can do the same spectrum as the single channel light. What advantage would someone have buying a single channel light when the spectrum tuning light can do much more?
I can answer that simply. The advantage of the single fixed spectrum is that I don't have to worry about a cultivation tech going in and messing with something and screwing up my rim. It's one variable that can be removed. Like, I want it to be so simple, as simple as possible, so we know we're getting a harvest to, and then we can play in a smaller area. That would be my only argument. And this is just coming from watching what's happened, working with the nursery, working with the lighting company, with BIOS. Like, everyone's under duress right now. There is no room for error. So although this stuff is fun and everyone's trying to come up with a new product, that I don't believe that's like a new feature, right? Because we're trying to stay relevant. We're trying to keep selling products. And what I did with BIOS is I developed a fixed spectrum that was something that really worked for specific cultivars, but it's simple. It's plug and play. And we have a full spectrum option as well, but it's simple. There's like, they can plug and play. I'm not gonna worry about someone coming in and hitting a dial or getting on the app or doing something that could threaten that crop, that harvest. No one can afford to lose a run right now. That's where we're at.
That's a good point. When you talk about growers, everybody's had their Goldilocks crop. Everybody's had it. You had one that just crushed everything else. You use the same spectrum, you use the same nutrients, something just drastically changed. And equating that to say, well, if we're going to change light spectrums that you can emulate that, it's not proven because you literally hit your Goldilocks crop in doing the exact same things that you've done before. There's too many variables. I love the idea of spectral tuning. It is where it's going, but the LED world is evolving in efficacy per watt. They're becoming more powerful for the amount of power draw. That's where this evolution is going, not in color.
The one thing I want to note is I do think that with the advances in artificial intelligence, that we might see that benefit faster, but it's going to be blended in with our chemotype and genotype understanding of the plant, which AI will bring us there. But I just would argue that we're not there right at this moment. So there's like the mainstream, cutting edge, bleeding edge. No one can be on the bleeding edge right now.
Even if we get into that place you say we should be soon, right? Fixtures have 5-year warranties. Do you want to buy a static fixture right now, or do you want to go with something that's spectrum tuning within 2 to 3 years? We know exactly how to optimize our crop with AI. You're still stuck with your static light, right? For 2 more years, but everyone moves on. If we look at the analogy of crop steering, right? 5-6 years ago, people were watering in intervals or once a day. You could say, I don't want to give my growers more control because they could fuck it up, right? You could also say, there's a lot of benefit behind crop steering and doing irrigation a certain way, which we're fine tuning right now, right? That's exactly what I look at spectrum tuning like. Crop steering took the cannabis world by storm, right? From 1 year to the next, almost no one was doing it, now everyone is. It's because they see how they can optimize their crop utilizing those techniques. I think that's exactly where spectrum tuning is at right now, and I think that's kind of where things are going.
It's very difficult to manage without measurements. So I think this is my question. We're doing all these light recipes, we're trying different things for different genetics. How do we manage this? How do we measure the outcome and the success? How do we repeat?
That's where I was about to go. I understand Nelson's concern about simplicity, operational effectiveness, different levels of training amongst your staff. So that comes to me, it makes me think about the control environment, right? So what is the controls that are driving your recipes? Is that locked down so only you, the head grower, have it? You can totally do that. So it sounds like that's more of a training issue or a control environment than necessarily, oh, I've got spectrum tuning, so somebody's going to screw it up. Well, okay, lock down the control then, and you don't have to worry about that.
That's a great point.
Another risk that we're going to run into with spectral tuning when you're running with multi-channel units, right, is you're going to be applying power to certain channels more than others. When you have a single spectrum and you just dim it, right, it's very stable and it's very repeatable. If you put all of your power into a blue spectrum, all your power into a red spectrum, every diode has an hour counter of life. You're going to stress a channel more than the other, and you will affect the overall longevity of the complete unit.
That's a pretty good point if you had a very small diode count, but a lot like our spectrum tuning lights have over 5,000 diodes, so you can run them on full power, and it would be just like running any other single.
But they all have a life. So
Yeah.
if you're consuming more life in one color over the other, or one channel over the other, you're going to age your fixture in a non-linear fashion.
Yeah, but it's still not going to hurt it within the first 7 years, though. Like if you have enough diodes, well,
I think he's arguing another point too, that it goes back to adding when you're adding that level of complexity in the grow, it's because you've got a more complex component. So those more complexity in that light means a higher chance that more failures that can occur, more points of failure. We need to eliminate points of failure for our customers. Plain and simple. There's nothing else.
No, but
that's our
there's a
look
point
at it.
to counter back at that though, because your single channel light, like we have spectrum tuning lights with 2 drivers, say 2 750 watt drivers.
There's 2 drivers that can fail.
If one of them fails, you still have light on your canopy while you were.
But I'm not getting the benefits of your fixture then if one of the drivers fail.
For a couple days until a replacement sent. If one of your drivers fail, you have no light until a replacement is sent. they're sitting.
Or you have backup drivers to replace immediately.
well, and
Which
so,
is typically what growers are doing now. Is they're
and that's
buying
what
backup
people do
drivers.
also. That's what I'm trying to say is that advantage. I don't think there's anything complicated. If you have 12 spectrums and you have a warm white and a cool white channel, how can you screw that up? Unless what, you're going to go into flower with cool white? I just don't see
You
any
can screw it up with the red.
No, if you don't, you're taking the red out of the control. I'm trying to say a 2-channel where the 660 and 730 is fixed, so it can never be at an inappropriate level.
But you can, but that's part of the spectrum tuning is being able to control the 730 and 660, right?
I just want to reiterate, we're indoor growers. It costs a lot to grow. We're not going to survive the future unless we grow the best cannabis. And if spectrum tuning gets us the best cannabis, hey, dude, that we have to do it because we have to grow craft cannabis indoor. We have to, and we have to have every tool in that arsenal to do that.
You know, some of your competitors will be. That is the theme of this booth, guys. We're trying to turn up the terps, increase plant health and immunity, using the right tools for the job. Because you're right, you can't just be growing the same salt recipe as everybody else with the same fix, whatever it might be.
Sorry, Sergio, your question kind of initially was how do you measure it, right? For me, it goes back to the points we were bringing up before. It's quality and yield, right? So that's how you measure if spectrum tuning is effective. If you get the best run you've ever gotten under lemon cherry gelato, let's say with our controller, you can go back and use the exact same template, right? So that's how you measure it. That's what you get, and then you can repeat it. So it's necessary to be able to save those templates and then be able to repeat it. If we're talking about making things easier, let's say crop steering again, right? If you run a vegetation irrigation strategy the whole run, you're gonna blow out your flower and the results aren't gonna be good, right? Well, that's the easiest thing to do, right? Just run the same dial and irrigate them the same, right? But you change it, don't you?
Right, but we understand how that works.
Yes, and we're understanding how spectrum tuning works right now too. So if you can save those templates, if you get a higher COA, if you get a higher yield, repeat it, right?
But the crop steering tech came after.
The crop steering tech was being sold after people would understand how to apply it. What I'm saying is right now we're still in the R&D phase. We don't fully understand how to apply it. Like some of the nerds know how to like apply it in specific ways, but when we're talking about giant grows, scaled, everything is now scaled. Like all the small guys are falling off, unfortunately. It breaks my heart. We're seeing everything consolidate. We're seeing margins get tighter. Right? These guys are not going to understand how to apply this technology. Everyone on this panel will, but that's not our customers.
But you have to take out deep red and far red. I know you said that's not part of spectrum tuning.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Pardon?
Deep red and
Far red is part of spectrum.
No, but I'm saying if you take that out and have a cool white and a warm white channel, just because you don't have the control of the deep red and far red, you can still go from 2000K to 9000K. It's still spectrum tuning. Just because you don't have the deep red and far red. And what I'm trying to say, if you have those levels fixed, there isn't a risk of screwing anything up, and it's only a massive advantage. And we have seen people, we've seen someone, a cultivar just recently in Canada that had never capped out at 28%, and by adding blue for the last 3 weeks, he got it 5% higher than he ever has and 1.5% higher in terps. And he did multiple tests. It's not just like one COA that he did. And it was life-changing. This was his first crop coming from HBS to LED. He actually did an HBS spectrum the whole time and then implemented blue towards the end.
I think it's creating templates too. If you have full spectrum tuning, right? Let's say you have 4 channels, let's say you have 7 channels, right? It doesn't matter. That's a lot of control to have. That's a lot of spectrums you can make. If the company you're going with has templates, right? Let's say 5 different templates. Veg, early flower, mid-flower, ripening. Let's say you want to reduce stretch. That's a template, right? Let's say you're photo bleaching. You reduce the 60 nanometer, right? That is kind of said to be a contributing factor behind photo bleaching. So if you give the grower the templates that they need and you make it simplistic, they'll utilize it, right? If you want to deviate from that plan slightly, we still know enough about spectrum to be able to use it to slightly adjust other channels, right? But giving the grower those templates, I think, is imperative with a million different possibilities as far as spectrum tuning goes.
That is precisely what I was saying about the Ferrari that also has the training wheels, right? All you have to do is push a button for this response, that response, that response. They're all well documented. We all know what they are. So you just push a button on the controller and you have it. You can build it into your recipe. So yeah, I don't see it as being a high amount of risk of just using presets for well-documented plant responses. And that, that does make it easy and takes away a lot of complexity of what is otherwise an infinite number of possibilities. Use what's proven and then adapt it and play with it a little bit genetic by genetic if you choose to.
Right, but I would just say with my experience with Spectrum Tune lights with presets is that I could not trust them because the technology would fail.
Okay, so
It's like a nutrient. If you go too far, by the time you realize that you've made a mistake, it's too late.
This is my point. Okay, so as we start to go into the next phase, emerging markets, right? Again, the globe's watching what we're talking about right now because they want to start somewhere. So where do they start? Is it a fixed spectrum? Is it a tunable spectrum? Right? We're trying to get to the next stage of education because we are setting the standard here. We're trying to get to people to understand what can they actually do on their farm. Right? What is the right product? There's a good, better, best for everything, and it's not always on price.
I have a good question for Nelson actually, because you guys developed that single channel light. What does it retail for?
TBD, but it'll be between 500 and 600, somewhere around there.
Okay, and do you know how many diodes it has?
I'd have to ask Way.
Oh, okay. No, I was just kind of curious on the price on stuff, like on what it was, and because that's why, like, we're bringing Spectrum Tuning with 5,310 diodes for $750 that can do 12 different spectrums, a 2000K to 9000K, and I just think it's affordable. I don't think you can screw it up. The far red and deep red are fixed in, and just I think the benefits outweigh anything else.
Godspeed.
Lower wattage, higher efficacy fixtures equate directly to the bottom line, right? That goes into your operational costs, and really we see this as the biggest place for LED gains today. I mean, you look at what we were building in 2018, where you had a 2.6 micromole per joule light source, compared to today, where we're pushing 3.4 micromoles per joule. We're literally able to give your plants 30% more growth power and consuming the same amount of wattage. We all pay our power bills by the wattage that we're consuming. So the biggest gain that we can give to the grower is the most efficient use of their power, not so much flexibility to make mistakes.
If you're looking at the best usage of your power, you're not always looking at the best spectrum for the plant though too, right? You bring up, we were at a 2.6, now we're at a 3.4, that's better for efficiency. It's not better for the plant, right? You're red loading your fixtures at the end of the day because red is a more efficient spectrum. So for me, if you're pushing intensity because you want to push yield and you have too much red, now you're photo bleaching, your back appeal is down, right? So for me, if you're looking at an emerging market and you're saying, where do I want to be now? Everyone on this panel has a 5-year warranty, correct?
Yes.
Where do you think the market's going to be in 5 years? Think about that. Think about where you want to be and how you can optimize your grow, and make the decision based off of that.
And the one thing I also want to bring up, to push 3 micromoles per joule with white diodes and not overloading the 660 nanometer, we actually did this, and it took us 4,488 diodes, and that's using 8.6% far red to be able to hit 3.0. The only other way people are hitting 3.0 micromoles per joule are by using a whole bunch of 660 nanometer deep red, which also suppresses the green, and in my opinion isn't the optimal spectrum, personally, from what we've seen.
It's terrible for cannabis because that's the tip bleaching wavelength. But people that are using supplemental greenhouses, not for cannabis, for other crops, they're pushing that kind of efficacy using very heavy red light supplemental. But that's a completely different discussion than we're talking about.
There's red in your white light, right? So
Yes,
if
there's
you're
Small
using
amounts of the full spectrum.
4,000 Kelvin versus 4,500 Kelvin, you've got a higher red content in your lower Kelvin spectrum. So it's not just your amount of 660 red nanometer; it's the holistic system. It's your entire.
Well, it goes
It's
by
not the entire spectrum, right? A lot of the foundational research behind photo bleaching or white tipping, whatever you want to call it, and I think they're two separate things. It's paired with that 660 nanometer red, right? If you're within 500 micromoles, between 600 and 700 nanometers in the first 4 weeks, you're exposing yourself to potential to photo bleach most cultivars that are somewhat sensitive. If you pull it under that, you're not going to photo bleach. You can push it past after week 4. So for me, if you're only looking for efficacy, you're looking at it the wrong way. You're going to bleach a decent amount, especially stuff that's more anthocyanin dominant. As growers here have seen.
Sure, everybody's looking for what is that magical red content, and so we look to some of the big guys, right? Philips Eindhoven, one of the largest horticulture institutes around that we can look for data, right? And they've pushed 60% red content without photo bleaching. So oftentimes what we're seeing is, and I use this as an example, when we launched the Gavita 1700, a 2.6 micromole per joule light source,
And that same grower, now we gave them the Gavita 2400. And he is not operating at such a level that it's not just the red content that's causing any bleaching or damage, it's the fact that he has a fixture that is so much more powerful than what he was using before. You could set the 2400 fixture to 70% operation and have the exact same output as the 1700. But when you look at the growers, they always exceed those operational levels. So intensity is more of a bleaching in today's world than just adding red.
I disagree. It's both, right? It's intensity and it's the amount of 660 nanometer that your plant is hitting. If you're hitting those thresholds, regardless if it's at 800 ppfd or 1400, you're making yourself more susceptible to photo bleaching. We hired the guy, Martin Foreman from Philips, who was integral in that research, and I'm taking all of this from learning from him.
So what is too much red?
Too much red is more than 500 micromoles between 6 and 700 nanometers for the first 4 weeks. After that, you can push it, and you won't get that white tint.
I've seen photo bleaching under low lumens before.
Same.
And those are the Burble lights, those are the red dominant lights, those are the 3.6 efficacy
That
lights.
was HPS.
You're anything that's higher efficacy with more red, you're gonna photo bleach at lower intensity.
I think that those super high efficiency or greenhouse spectrums where you have the red and the blue and you let the clouds fill in the rest. And like I see a lot of people that have been pushing greenhouse spectrums inside. I don't understand why, because having it more spread out is better, especially if you're raising and lowering your lights.
A true indoor light or a greenhouse supplemental are fundamentally different products.
I would just want to comment. We're getting a little off topic here. It's getting a little spicy. This is my field right here. I love it. I'm agreeing with the Fos guy. Hell is frozen over. But I agree with the red comment. I would also make an argument that the lighting industry has been chasing efficiency for the last 5 years. That's like, that's cool, but it's divorced from consumer value. And I think we've gotten away from what's creating a flower that people desire the most. I would probably argue that spectrum tuning is going to reduce some degree of efficiency. I know because you've got these levels of variables and you're changing things up to some extent. And what really matters, I'm going to go back to it again, is making sure that our customers can grow a sellable crop and that the consumer cares about it. And what I have seen is jacking these light levels, which I was very critical of. I believe that growing cannabis is like a zero-sum game. So you're going to dilute some degree of that cannabinoid potential, those other metabolites, all of the other things that make cannabis great. And you'll hit this point where, as I used to call it, you'll be growing boofy fart sticks. So when you're giving it like 2,000 ppfd, and I've played with all of these different light levels for years and gone down the rabbit hole. And there is kind of a sweet spot for different cultivar ranges. And that's a conversation we should be having. How can we help you grow the best flower? And if the best flower means we're going to be slightly less efficient, then that's where we're at. And if we're overpowering our lights to increase the efficiency, I still have to dedicate that power at my building, which is a challenge, right? Like not everybody, power is a challenge across the board for cultivators. So it's a balancing act. And I think the right light depends on the grower, depends on what limiting factors that they have, depends on what those resources have, and there isn't going to be universal fix-all. You might have a grower that's got a craft brand that's still getting $5,000 a pound, and that spectrum tuning is going to maintain. They exist. There's a few, toad venoms out there, right? What is that, a $16,000 pound? Something crazy like that. But I think there are markets for all of these things, but the commodity market, which is what cannabis is, I think it's going to be about what's going to provide the bulletproof product for the customer.
I agree with Nelson about efficiency. 2019 and 2020, it was an efficiency war for LEDs, and whoever had the highest number was basically on top. Quality is so much more important. The second you get above 2.7 micromoles per joule, you're with 600 to 700 watts, you have enough to do 3+ or do really well. There's definitely enough light. The one thing I would say about spectrum tuning, I'd say it actually gives you an advantage in efficiency if you have a bunch of diodes, because you're running so many diodes and you have it dimmed down so much. It actually, in a lot of cases, is going to give you higher efficacy than this. Like you could do a spectrum from another company, and you're going to do it more efficiently than their own spectrum.
So, guys, on that point, I want to be mindful of time. We have 10 minutes, and I do want to jump into Q&A. So, Nick, I know you have one thought about intensity. That's going to lead us right into Q&A.
Yeah, because I think this is an important thing because obviously since we've got Faven here talking about under canopy, there's something I want to get to. So we talk about high wattage and very powerful lights is a way to get the yield. My hypothesis about the amount of light throughout the whole plant and the overall plant health is you've got to get light to the middle part of the plant, not just at the top. So science does that through optics that drive the intensity and angles, so you get more canopy penetration deeper. There's other manufacturers that can just go with straight pure power, and then you can use under canopy as supplemental to get the middle part of the plant healthy by getting the light that it was otherwise missing. So this is an important topic in the industry as far as how do you properly get the whole plant to its maximum photosynthetic potential. Is it just from a top light? Is it top light and a bottom light? Is it using optics? Is it using power? And let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tiny bit more than that too. If you can get a homogeneous light level throughout your plant, you're gonna optimize it and you're probably gonna get the same yield from bottom to top, right? It also pairs in with temperature. And one of the things that under canopy is adding, I mean, you see greenhouse who are adding, floor heaters, bench heaters, stuff like that, because the gradient between the top of the plant to the lower plant is so much. So if you have kind of a homogeneous temperature throughout the plant, and same with light intensity, I mean, goodbye C-nugs, right? I mean, you're getting all A's and B's.
That's been one of our main value propositions, is to improve the quality of the nuggets further down. So while your total biomass may be a similar weight level, you're getting a lot more that is a quality top shelf flower, which is more dollars to the grower.
Last point I'll jump in for under canopy though too is a lot of the unders people are measuring, and you're under 150 FD, right? The unders are now becoming a sink and not a source. You're using your plant carbohydrates to keep that plant material alive. With under canopies, that is now a source, and not only are you increasing the bottom nugs, it's actually increasing the top flower as well.
So we moved away from growing big plants. So under canopy wasn't really, we got light all around the plants with the Gavita 1900 RSs because we're growing 4-foot tiers. So and with the right plant density, you can get light to all the plant. And it is healthier when light gets to all the plant. Something I think I brought up earlier, I grew some taller plants and used some Favens. Very noticeable plant health increase when you're adding light to the whole part of the plant. What does this look like though when we're growing smaller tier systems? Are we going to have under canopy there?
Yeah, I operate a double tier. I used to call under canopies double tier because I just didn't get the application for it. Sorry about that. Sorry. My voice is out almost. So when you're in a 4-foot cap, that's tough.
Up to 60 inches, but we have some tiers that are 4 foot.
That's tough. I mean, it's tough. I mean, if you've got a 5-foot cap, it's workable. I've got a 5.5-foot cap at Amplified Farms in Sacramento. It's 120 light room, and I mean, we've increased their yield, 35%. And it's really, and yield's going to drive all these conversations, but it really comes down to uniformity of end product, right? Is limiting or eliminating low value SKUs. Smalls in California, even if they're purple, 600. When in LA, are they 500? If they're green, they're free. Like, you know what I mean? Like we have in California, which is the most mature market in the world from a cultivator and a smoker consumption market standpoint. And we've got 6 different finished flower SKUs, right? We've got purple A's, we've got green A's, whatever. You guys all know the buckets. Anyway, so we're eliminating all the lower value SKUs while yield is the big driver of this conversation. We're talking about making more revenue per square foot, right? So you've got to think about that, and also the labor savings, right? No more underclearing, no more relying on third-party labor, and which is, I think, unskilled.
Don't get me started on that one.
I was gonna say unskilled labor is like the worst term like ever created, but like people who just don't care as much as we do, because this is what we do and this is what we love, right? There's a difference. And so kind of being able to move away from that is a very, very safe place to be in from a cultivator, to Nelson's point, eliminating any potential issues that you could have, right? So
the smaller the tier, the less under canopy lights
Yeah.
become beneficial, right? I think that's a blanket statement we can all agree
I
on.
mean, 4 feet is, how
it's-
you
it's
doing
tough,
that?
right?
How you doing that with top light?
Yeah, and there's studies that show, I mean, if you're at least at 300 to 400 micromoles, your testing should be pretty consistent up to like 1200, right? So if you're hitting 300 to 400 on your bottom, you have to now adjust, is this worth it as far as a labor standpoint, quality standpoint, and then decide based on that.
But it's a competitive market, and I think really uniformity of end product and understanding your consumer base is really where all this has to be. Like, we can sit up here and talk nanometers and bleaching and spectrum all we want, but if you don't make it to 2025, none of it matters.
Amen.
And I think there's
we can talk for 5 hours.
there's 3 conversations happening up here. It's 5 years, it's now, it's warranty. There's so many conversations, but to your point, under canopy is not supplemental. It is an absolute fact that you're gonna have to have it in order to compete in this market.
It is now, and I hate admitting that.
Well,
I've been doing it for 5 years now, so
I got at least one customer in Colorado that's using the Science with the 70-degree optics. He put in under canopies, running like 4 or 5 foot tall plants, not 4 or 5 foot racks, 5 foot plants, and he got very little benefit out of the under canopy. So at least on that one, I can say he's getting adequate amount of light down from the top light. That's one example, but it's.
I would love to talk to him.
Yeah, it's the
I'll
SOPs.
set it up.
Yeah, I would love to talk to him because we're in 600 facilities for a reason.
And I would like to hire anyone
Start selling.
that's sold under canopy to anyone growing on a 4-foot shelf. That's a great light sales rep.
I did not sell that to him, okay? It was a different grow.
Correction there. I do not use under canopy at Maven and
Chad has taught
Cushali.
me for years.
So I have a look. I saw it benefit on taller plants. So that's where that correction goes.
And I'm not knocking under canopy at all. We've now taken some of our veg lights, added reds to them, flip them upside down, and to use as under canopy too. So we are, we're working on more under canopy stuff because some people that don't want to redo all the top lights they already have need under canopy maybe with spectrum control. So that's why we're trying to look at that. Anyway.
And on that note,